And for that, I'll add a new file to my header component, the header.component.css file. I will now go to my TypeScript definition of the header component and connect it to that CSS file with the styles URL, with the style URLs property here. This takes an array where you could add multiple style files, but I of course only want to point to that single header.component CSS file we just created. And now in there we can style our anchor tags for this component here. So let's style the anchor tags. Let's say we really want to have no text decoration. Maybe the color should be white. And this looks already much better. Now, of course, that bullet point should go away. So I know that for this component, my unordered list should have a list style of none. And I also want to set the padding to 0 and the margin. To 0 here. We now go back. This looks better, but now messages and new posts directly sit on, well, next to each other. And would be nice to have some spacing in there and have the new post option on the right. Because later we will also add options to, or an option to go to the sign up area, for example. And we can easily add such a thing by adding one extra element here in our toolbar, another span, which we don't give any content, but a class which could be spacer. The name is up to you. But now we can take that class and style that here in our header.css file. And the style you should assign here is flex11auto, because the toolbar uses flexbox by default, and this will actually make sure that the spacer element takes all the available remaining space between the other elements you got up there. And it therefore pushes element, takes all and the style you should, but now Now we can take that class and style that here in our head. This looks much better. Now it would also be nice to have some styling on that last button when we hover over it, or when we, well, actually are on that links page. And we can achieve this by not using a normal anchor tag like this, but by also adding the mat button directive to this. Now this is a material button. If we go back, you now see it looks a bit different, and now we got a nice hover effect out of the box, which is pretty neat. It's also a bit smaller than my messages, which is also great because this is our brand here on the left. This isn't. So now it would just be nice to keep some, well, highlighted style, maybe change the color of it when we are on that create page. And to add this feature, we can go back and use another feature of the Angular router. We can add the router link active directive here, which will actually assign there. And it therefore pushes new posts to the right and my message. Matte button, which is pretty neat. It's also a bit smaller than my messages, which is also great because this is our brand here on the left. This isn't. So now it would just be nice to keep some, well, highlighted style, maybe change the color of it. Page, Angular route div, CSS acts that the cool CSS. So now with that, you see, it's highlighted like this. So now with that, accent color. To the underlying element. So now with that, you see, it's highlighted like this if we are on the page, but if we are not, well, then it's not highlighted like this. So this is a nice effect for now. We might revisit this later, but for now we got this working. We can switch between the pages and we have a visual feedback about which page we're on. Let's now focus on this create page again, and let's make sure that we can not just create new posts with it, but also edit existing posts. Now we added routing, and before we dive into editing posts, there's one important thing I want to highlight. We now have routes here in our Angular app defined in the app routing module, but we also have routes on the backend in the app.js file, and these routes are actually not really connected. They're running on different servers, so our backend is of course running on localhost 3000 because that is the port we defined, and they do different things. The Angular router is actually just a tool that is able to parse the URL of our app and then render different things onto the screen through JavaScript. That is what it's doing. It's not loading different HTML pages. We only have one HTML page, the index.html page. But it's re-rendering the content of that page for the different URLs we're visiting. Now important, these routes here in the Angular router are only known by Angular, which is a client-side application, so which is a JavaScript-driven application running in the browser. This means, and this will become important when we later deploy this, that the server doesn't know these routes, neither our backend here, nor any server that might serve our Angular app. and I will show you which implications this has and how we make the server aware of this fact later when we deploy this. It's also important to note that if you were to host your Angular app on the same server as your Node app, there will be a couple of things to keep in mind, which you will see, but one important thing is that you must not use routes you defined in Angular, like this /create route here, that you must not use them in your backend too. Because what would happen then is that the server would parse and understand them because you defined them there, and it would not pass the page on to Angular to also have a look at that. Instead, it would do what it does, and this is probably not that it returns the index.html file. So this is very abstract. We'll come back to this when we deploy our app, but it's important to understand the difference between client-side routing, which is all about reading the URL and re-rendering parts of the page, and server-side routing, which is all about handling incoming requests and sending back something different. In one case, the server-side routing, you really exchange data, you're sending requests and responses. In the client-side case, you're not doing that. You're reading the URL and you are re-rendering the page. Now, with that theory part out of the way, now that we know that there at least is some difference between server-side and client-side routing, let's actually go back to the client side and make our posts editable. Now, right now, I can of course still create new posts, like here, new post. This is a new post, like that, and if I save that, I can go back to my messages, and here we got the new post. Now, clicking edit doesn't do anything though. Now, I want to change it. When we click edit, I simply want to go back to the new. post page. But of course, it shouldn't be the new post page. It should just be, well, the same form I see there, I'd say. So I will first of all create a new route for that. That new route will also load the post create component, but I will access it through edit, and then I need to know which post to edit. And that should be information that's encoded in the URL. So I will add a dynamic segment to that path. So edit is one part of the path, but then I'll have another part separated by a slash, which is dynamic.